Welcome to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm your host, Susie St. Angelo, and thank you for showing up today. Today's episode is called How Hypnotherapy Can Help Heal. Join me today for a conversation with Certified Clinical Hypnotherapist, Craig Meriweather. Craig has a fascinating background. He's a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnosis specialist, neuro-linguistic programming specialist, and founder of Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, helping people eliminate the negative emotions and limiting beliefs that may be keeping them from reaching their full potential. For over 12 years, Craig has been helping people heal from early childhood trauma, helping cancer patients with pain control, veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, students with test anxiety, entrepreneurs with confidence, athletes with peak performance, and anyone who may be dealing with overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. And remember today to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast, and follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So this podcast is for you if you know you want to change something, whether that's your career, your health, or another aspect at any age and stage in your life, and you don't know what to do or how to do it. Or you may be that person who is afraid to take that first step, caught in analysis paralysis. I see and understand you, and I felt the same way. Let's get into today's episode and meet my guest, Craig Meriweather. Hi, Craig.
Hi, how are you doing, Susie?
Good, I'm doing great today. Thanks for being on SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life.
Yeah, we were talking before we hit record button about how long it's been since we've been talking about doing this, and so I've really been looking forward to it.
Yes, me too, Craig. I'm excited to delve into to what you do and how people who are listening can benefit from your talents and your services. So I always start and ask, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background and how you got into this and what you do.
Well, I am a hypnotherapist, and the reason I came to doing this kind of work is I was struggling with my own depression and anxiety started back in my teenage years. This is the 1980s. So they didn't have the, SSRI drugs, Prozac, things like that. Those came out in the mid 1990s, late 1990s. So really all you had in the 1980s was talk therapy or, whatever book you could find at the bookstore or, at the library. And of course, you're a teenager, you don't know much. You don't know how life can be. And so I just kind of sat with it. Moved into the 1990s as I was growing up into my 20s. And it just felt like this was the way it was going to be. This is how it was. Just like that kind of coat that you wear. Maybe it's not too comfortable. Maybe it's really heavy. But that's what the coat you're wearing. And it was really the birth of my son in the year 2000 that I thought I'd really need to get my act together and really need to figure this out. And so I started working on myself. I started doing whatever techniques, exercises, whatever book I could find, whatever article. At the point they had the internet, that was really starting to hit hard around 2000, 2001. And so there's a lot of information you could get your hands on. My mother struggled with depression. I struggle with depression. So I wanted to make sure whether it was a genetic thing or, mirroring what I saw in the home, nature or nurture, I was prepared to help my son. And so that was the motivating factor. And I just worked on myself and, here and there, on and off. And one day I woke up and I realized, I hadn't felt depressed in a really, really long time because I had been doing the work. And what I realized, I had a toolbox full of tools. And I started, writing about it. And at that point, blogs were taking off and YouTube was just coming out. And I wrote a book called Depression 180 and doing interviews about that, started my own podcast, all this stuff. But what was always in the back of my head was therapeutic hypnosis, because I think that's what really, really helped me the most. And I was given the opportunity to kind of make a shift in midlife, and kind of took that right hand turn, and kind of just moved off into a different direction. Studied, trained at this wonderful school, the Hypnotherapy Academy of America. It's a great school, 2.5 months, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Really intensive training and education in therapeutic hypnosis, 500 hours, and that's the foundation, and been working with it ever since. And so there's a few ways we can go about this. Especially, I love the title of your podcast, because what's extraordinary about this work is it can be so helpful in so many areas, from your mental health, emotional health, and physical health as well. And not just me saying that. There's extraordinary research out there that you can dive into. Not only you can find on my website, maybe we can put a link to research in the show notes, but there's a subsection of Google Scholar. It's scholar.google.com officially, but if you just go to regular Google and put in Google Scholar, it'll come up. And what that searches is just research papers that have been published in peer-reviewed scientific and medical journals. And just put in hypnotherapy, or put in hypnotherapy and cancer, hypnotherapy and pain control, whatever it is. And you'll get thousands upon thousands of research studies showing the efficacy of this work. And of course, we can go in a deeper dive about what hypnosis is, and specifically what it isn't, because I know a lot of people have a kind of a misnomer about what it all is. There's a lot of myths about it that specifically come from movies and television shows. And it's really unfortunate, because I think it scares a lot of people off, this modality. And yeah.
It's interesting you should say that, because you were reading my mind, because my next question I was thinking would probably be, what are the misconceptions, Craig, about hypnotherapy, for people who either have heard the term or really know nothing about it? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, probably the biggest one, of course, is that, this weird person's going to make me bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken. And I hear that sometimes from people. I'm like, why would I wanted that to do that? What kind of weird sadist, or just like I have nothing better to do with my time? And after you've done it once or twice, why do I still want to do that? What's unfortunate about it is, again, I think it keeps a lot of people from this modality, because maybe they've gone to a Las Vegas show, or they've gone to a comedy club and seen one of the entertainment shows, YouTube on video. And it's funny. I've seen a couple of those shows. They're funny. And let's just assume that it's not the local theater troupe. It's not the local improv troupe up there just acting silly. But let's say it's a for real thing. Please understand that everybody up on that stage volunteered to be up there. They're not making anybody go up there to sing like Elvis Presley, or to dance like Michael Jackson, or impersonate Beyonce, or whatever. They bought a ticket to the show. They sat in their seat when the hypnotist comes out and says, "Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Let's have a great night. And who wants to come up here and have a really fun evening?" And a bunch of people raise their hands. Some people are jumping up and down, waving their hands all around, because they're excited to be up there. They're exhibitionists. They're extroverts. They want a funny video to put on TikTok or Instagram or something. They want to be funny in front of their friends. And so they're excited to be up there, and they get picked, and they're really excited. They run up on stage and they sit in their seat, and there's 10 of them, and the hypnotist goes down the row. "What's your name? Where are you from? And you ready to go into hypnosis? Have a great night?" "Yes." "Oh, this is so exciting." They say yes like 7 times before this guy makes them, sing like Elvis, or dance like Michael Jackson, or whatever the gag is. And afterwards he asks them, it's like, "Do you have a good time?" "I had a great time." And they're excited about it. They're proud of what they did. And so it's this thing of, and in the movies too, how are we going to get Jason Bourne to assassinate the Prime Minister of England? It's like, oh, well, hypnotize him, because that saves them a lot of time and plot moving the plot forward and money and having to film all the scenes and training and what. Well, let's just hypnotize them, and somebody snaps their fingers 3 times and he zombifies them and they can control them. And of course, then there's the conspiracy theories of, what the CIA and the Soviet Union were doing in mind control, which was kind of scary back in the 50s and 60s, the MK Ultra stuff. And God knows what they're still doing today. But that's not what therapeutic hypnosis is. You can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. If you could, smoking cessation work would be 100% guarantee. Even if you didn't want to quit smoking, I could just snap my finger 3 times and you'd quit smoking. I can make everybody be as awesome as I'd just be able to go around just to strangers in the supermarket and say, you're going to be as awesome as ever and live your best life. And, that's not the way it works. I'd be able to charge $1,000 a session, and everybody'd be writing me big checks. But that's not the way it works. And it's just unfortunate that these, the 2 sides of this is more entertainment side and the stuff you see in the movies has the same name as the therapeutic side of it, hypnosis or hypnotherapy. And there's nothing magical or mystical about this work. In fact, the word hypnosis comes from Greek mythology and the Greek god Hypnos, who is the Greek god of sleep. And back in the 1850s, there was a doctor in England by the name of Dr. James Bard, and he was a surgeon. And, back in the 1850s, you didn't have fancy hospitals, you didn't have fancy anesthesia. You have to have your leg amputated, you're biting down on a stick. You got a blow to the head to knock you unconscious. And so what Dr. James Bard started doing was using a deep, deep, deep trance state, putting people so far under it looked like they were in a coma. And so then he could operate, he could do amputations, he could cut people open, take out tumors, sew them back up. He could, deal with war wounds and injuries and things like that. Now, he certainly did not invent the trance state, certainly in India and Egypt and South America and the Aboriginals of Australia. They're all using trance in their healing and spiritual work thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years ago. But Dr. James Bard started using this deep trance state and needing a word to describe this coma-like state to his colleagues and to write about it, he decided to name it after the Greek god of sleep. So he called it hypnosis. And since then, it's been co-opted to talk about all sorts of different types of trance states, whether it's a very, very light trance state or very deep trance state, which they still use. If somebody's allergic to the anesthesia, they'll use hypnosis. So people can get surgery. You can watch videos on YouTube of people getting root canals, and they're allergic to the Novocaine or the lidocaine or something. And, they're getting cavities drilled and all sorts of things, and they're just using hypnosis. That's how powerful this stuff is, how powerful your subconscious mind is. And really all we're talking about is lowering your brainwave state. That's how you get into hypnosis. And it's an altered state of consciousness. There's another, what may seem like a scary term, but an altered state of consciousness is just moving your brainwave state from beta down to alpha. And the famous ones we learned about in school, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. And when I'm sure, Susie and some probably your listeners have had the experience of, driving down the street. You're driving home, and all of a sudden you start thinking about the meeting tomorrow, and you say, I got to get the PowerPoint together, or I got to get my bullet points together, or the parent-teacher conference you got to deal with, or, you got family coming over on the weekend. You need to get the house together. You need to get the shopping done. You start thinking about all these things, your to-do list, your future thinking. And all of a sudden you find yourself in your driveway or your parking spot or whatever, and you don't remember the last 5 or 6 blocks. Some people call it driving hypnosis. You've just put yourself in an altered state of consciousness. You're watching, you're in a meeting, let's say, and the meeting's really boring, or maybe it doesn't pertain to your, what you're working on. And you start thinking about something else. You start staring out the window. Back in high school math class, you just start staring out the window, thinking about the weekend, how much fun you're going to have. You just put yourself in an altered state of consciousness. And so it's nothing unusual, nothing strange. It's something we do multiple times every day. Most noticeably when you're falling asleep and waking up in the morning. And really all you're doing is moving from the beta brainwave state down to the alpha or theta brainwave state. And it's really just how fast your neurons are firing. So let's say I'm back, as an example, I'm back in high school math class. And I'm taking notes because it's going to be on the test, and I need to do well in this class. I need to get a good grade. And so I'm writing the notes, and I'm paying attention to the teacher. I'm in beta. And so I'm firing about 18 cycles per second when all my neurons fire together. So I'm moving my hands around, talking with my hands, or if I'm walking down the street or I'm drinking a glass of water, I'm thinking a thought, feeling an emotion, I'm firing brain cells. And it fires in a wave from the back to the front to the back again. That's one wave. So in the beta brainwave state in consciousness, I'm paying attention to the teacher. We're having a conversation, you and I, Susie. We're in the beta brainwave state. We're firing about 18 cycles per second. But this is really boring for me, and I don't like math. And so I just kind of start staring out the window, and I start thinking about the weekend and how much fun I'm going to have with my friends. And I just can't get here soon enough. And now I've just slowed down my brainwave state. I've turned off the external world. I don't hear the teacher anymore. See, teacher's still talking. The kids are still, shooting spitballs and acting up and talking to each other and asking questions. And I don't hear that anymore. I've moved inward. I'm more in a daydreamy state, thinking about the future. I've now slowed down my brainwave state to maybe 12 cycles per second. And then I start doing one of these. My eyes are getting heavy. My head's nodding down. I'm moving deeper and deeper into a restful, relaxed state. I'm not asleep, but I'm not really awake either. Now I've just slowed my brainwave state down to 6 cycles per second. Now I'm in the theta brainwave state. In a little bit here, I might be fast asleep. I might be snoring on my desk. I'm down, 1 cycle, half cycle per second. I'm in delta. But before that happens, the teacher sees me and says, "Hey, Craig, why don't you come up here and do the problem on the board?" And I do one of these. I look around, I shake it off, and all the kids are staring at me, and the teacher's annoyed and staring at me, and I see this big equation on the board. I don't know how to do that. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't hear him. I didn't hear him explain it. And now I'm stressed. So now I'm firing about 30 cycles per second because I'm in the stress response. And so just in a matter of, 5, 6, 7 minutes, I've altered my state of consciousness 3 or 4 times just sitting there in high school math class, And so whether you're driving home, you're standing in line at the grocery store, you're in a meeting at work, you kind of, if you fuzz out and you start thinking about something else, you're just lowering your brainwave state. They showed watching TV lowers your brainwave state down to the alpha brainwave state. So just watching TV puts you in the kind of hypnotic trance state. So this isn't anything unusual. It's not anything different or new. You're doing it multiple times a day. So really what happens in therapeutic hypnosis is we just take advantage of that. And by doing that, you quiet down that conscious level of mind, and you can access the subconscious where all that kind of computer code of how you live your life is stored. And some of that computer code, especially the code around how to keep you safe, may have been set up by a child, because of the hurt and pain that you may have experienced back when you were growing up. And maybe the house you grew up in wasn't the most nurturing environment. And maybe the best way you could keep yourself safe was to hide and to keep yourself small. Maybe that was the best thing you could have done when the arguments started going, the fighting started going between your parents. Maybe the best thing to do was to hide and keep yourself small. And so that's great safety protocol that you install within your subconscious mind. That's not going to work when you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 70s or 80s. But until you change the computer code, nothing's going to change. Why would anything change until you change the instructions? And so that's what we do in therapeutic hypnosis. You can change the instructions. And that's why it doesn't take a long time. We don't talk about it. This isn't talk therapy. And great healing, great insights can come from talk therapy. But we're not going to sit for 80, 90, 100 sessions over 2 years talking about the situation. Where do you feel the hurt? Where's that anxiety? Where's that trauma? Where's that anger? Where do you feel it? Where's the physical pain? Where do you feel it? Let's do something about it. And that's why oftentimes I just tell people, we're looking at like 3, 4 sessions. That's it. Oftentimes it's less. And so the reason why this is such a powerful modality, therapeutic hypnosis, why it's so helpful to so many people is because I'm not going to fix you. And this is the extraordinary part of it. People think I'm going to take control and do all sorts of things. No, I'm not. I'm not going to fix you. And hypnotherapy in of itself is not going to fix you. You're going to fix yourself. And that's where the power of this comes from, because who better to, one, know what the problem is, the real problem, than you? And who better to know how to solve it than you? How to resolve the issues, even if it was back when you were a child. And you may say, well, I don't remember what the problem was. That's fine. Again, we're not using your conscious mind. This isn't talk therapy. You don't even have to know what the problem is. You just say, I just feel this anxiety. I just feel this chronic anger. I'm just angry all the time. It's like, okay, well, you know why you're angry, because you have to change your brain chemistry to feel that anger in your body. You have to create the adrenaline and cortisol. You have to create these neuropeptides, these molecules the brain creates, dumping hundreds of millions of these molecules in your system. So you feel the anxiety, you feel the anger, you feel the overwhelm, the worry, the love, the joy, the happiness. These are literal molecules of fear, molecules of anxiety, molecules of joy, molecules of happiness, dumping in your system. Those have to be created. And the way, the brain changes in the way we're discussing right now is through a thought or a memory. So by accessing that thought or memory, even unconsciously, maybe something in your external environment gets triggered. Example, you're at work, let's say, and you're the marketing person or something, and Bill and Fred in the next office start arguing again. And they're arguing about the accounting because the numbers, once again, aren't adding up at the end of the month. And so Bill and Fred go at it again, and they start yelling at each other and arguing. And all of a sudden you start feeling really anxious, and your palms are getting sweaty. You just want to make yourself small and hide, because maybe if you were growing up and you didn't have such a nurturing environment at home, and mom and dad argued all the time. And that was really scary when you're 5 years old or 6 years old. And maybe eventually mom and dad got divorced. So there's a lot of anger in the home. And the best way to keep yourself safe in that very unsafe environment was to keep yourself small and to hide. And so that's a great safety protocol. So now when you hear Bill and Fred in the next office arguing about the monthly accounting, it has nothing to do with you. You're not in the accounting department, and Bill and Fred are idiots anyway. And why do they even work together and put them in the same office? It has nothing to do with you. But that trigger, it feels unsafe. And it's like, well, there's people arguing. The last time people argued, it wasn't very safe. And you need to hide to make yourself small, and your nervous system changes, and you put on that fight or flight stress response. You put on that armor, even though it's just Bill and Fred. And so you don't know why you're doing. You hear this argument, and all of a sudden you feel scared, you feel afraid, you feel maybe really anxious or worried or overwhelmed, and you just want to hide somewhere and run away. That's happening automatically because you have those instructions in there. And so you may even don't even remember the fighting in the home. Of course, you may remember your parents getting divorced, but you don't remember the intensity when you were 5 or 6 years old. But your subconscious mind does, and it wants to protect you from that. And so it's trying to warn you by putting on that armor, by sending you the signals of anxiety or fear. There's danger here. And it happened automatically, unconsciously. And so that's what's happening in our lives every day. You may not know consciously what the problem is, but your subconscious mind does. Your subconscious mind knows what the problem is, the origin of the situation, and is trying to protect you from it. That's why you feel like that. So you absolutely know what the problem is. And what's extraordinary about therapeutic hypnosis is that, by bypassing the conscious mind, by moving into a more relaxed, restful state, moving to that altered state of consciousness of alpha brainwave state, you bypass that conscious, logical, analytical mind, and you move into the subconscious where those instructions are held, and you're allowed to change them. You're the one who put them in there, which is not to say it was your fault, to blame the victim. It certainly wasn't fair, but actually becomes very empowering when you realize, well, if you're the one who put those instructions in there, even as a little kid, then you can change them. You're the one who has the power to change them and do something about it. And that's where the healing comes from. That's where the empowerment comes from in this work. Again, I'm not going to fix you. I don't know what the problem is. And hypnotherapy are just techniques and tools to help you get to a resource state to deal with it yourself. Fix it yourself. who better to know what to do about it than you? You know what the child needs, or you know what you needed as a teenager or as a young adult, or what you needed last week when the situation happened. Or again, or maybe it's even like a physical issue, physical pain. Works great with physical pain. And, to the point where people can have dental work without any Novocaine or lidocaine. And people have surgery. And so this isn't some sort of methodology where somebody else takes control. It's a methodology where you take control. And, if you work with somebody who is skilled and trained, and that's a big point, making sure the person you work with has the education and the background, because a lot of people, unfortunately, who get into this field, they may just take like a weekend's worth of video classes, something to do on their own time. And while that's great for continuing education and learning some maybe new techniques, oftentimes it's the first person they work with is their first paying client, and so they don't have a background on how to work with anybody. Going to a school like the Hypnotherapy Academy or there's some other great schools around, you actually work with people, you train with people, with coaches in the room, so you actually understand how this work happens. So really make sure the person you work with, if you want to try out this modality of therapeutic hypnosis, make sure the person you're working with has a great education, a great training background. And if they don't mention it, they just say they're like a certified hypnotherapist and they don't explain where they got their training from, I'd walk away. That's always a huge red flag to me, because I brag about it. I brag about my education because it's really great. It's just like one of those annoying people who talks about going to Harvard, and they have the Harvard shirt and they mention 5 times during the network event that they went to Harvard. That's what I do. I mention it all the time because I'm proud of it, and I want everybody to know, that I did the training, I did the hard work of and just for example, here I am bragging about my education, but just an example, EMTs that ride in the ambulances and they restart hearts with the adrenaline shots, and they got to deal with broken legs and things like this, keeping people alive, triage so they can get to the hospital alive. That's 150 hours to ride to be an EMT. I got 500 just walking out of the Hypnotherapy Academy, let alone all the continuing education I've done. And so that's that's a brag on me, I know, but it's mainly just to make sure the person you're working with, just like if you're going to go to a talk therapist, make sure it's just not somebody who took a couple, watched a couple of YouTube videos. Make sure, because this can be deep work, and while it's led by you, the facilitator really needs to know what they're doing. If it goes into a deeper place than maybe you both thought it was going to go to.
So let me stop us here, because as I listen to you, yes, I agree. It's important to find out the credentials of someone who's going to perform this type of therapy. But let's back up to someone who is coming to you. How many people have knowledge of hypnotherapy, and how many people would you say are you educating from the minute you talk to them about this type of modality?
That's a really good question. I would say it's about maybe 50-50, and either they know nothing about it or they've done all the research. And either way, and most hypnotherapists do this, but either way, we usually start off with a consultation call, just a free consultation call, most hypnotherapists, and just to talk about it. And a lot of people either have done all their research, and other people just say, well, my friend did it and they suggested I should call you, but I really don't know what it's about. Generally though, I'd say about 80% of the people are on their last rope. They've done everything else.
They've exhausted all other efforts to do. Yeah. That's what I thought too.
Yeah, and again, we're like the witch doctors. So you're going to wait till you've done everything. They've done years and years of talk therapy. They've gone to all the doctors. Nobody can find a reason for the pain. The talk therapy hasn't helped resolve anything. And after 3 or 4 years, they still feel awful. And it's like, what else is there? The medication didn't work. What else is there? Well, there's hypnotherapy, and they're so desperate. They're in so much pain. They're like, okay, I'll try it. They're at their wits' end because they have nothing else. And we're always at the bottom of the list. They'll try everything else, and God bless them, because I get it. Because of the kind of bad PR hypnotherapy has gone due to the Las Vegas shows and movies and TVs. I get it, but it's also frustrating because then you work with them, 2, 3, 4 times, and they're like, "Wow, that's amazing. I'm done." That was faster than I thought. Because what's extraordinary about this is because just as instantaneously as you can install that trauma, let's say a little kid, something happened in the home, there's abuse in the home or something, just as instantaneously as you can install that trauma, that fear, that anxiety, that worry, that overwhelm, that anger, just as instantaneously as you can install that through a traumatic event in your life, why wouldn't you be able to instantaneously heal it? Who told you couldn't do that? And what is, how does it benefit them that it takes you years to heal? And what's extraordinary about it, this is a good story. I was working with somebody who was a psychotherapist, and he was dealing with some health issues, some pretty tragic health issues around cancer and things. Older guy, and he'd retired. And he was doing talk therapy. He was doing TFT, which is kind of like a emotional freedom technique, the tapping thing. If people know about that, that's a whole nother episode somewhere. But he was doing that, and he was working with me. And so he had this team, this Justice League, this X-Men, this Avengers group of people working with him to help him with this, on top of his oncologists and doctors and things. But he was a marriage family counselor for many, many decades, had retired at that point, and but had his master's degree and all that stuff. And I was working with him. And again, my modality, my view of healing and the world around me is that healing can take, it doesn't take a long time. You can do it pretty quickly. Now, I'm not saying it's one and done. It's just one session and that's it. I don't really care for that. I know that there's a trend nowadays in the hypnotherapy world of like, I can heal that trauma in 20 minutes. And it's like, that I don't like. People take the time they need to heal. But I also know this isn't going to take 80, 90 sessions over a couple of years. Let's take 4 or 5 sessions and really do this deep work. And so that's my view of the world, of healing. And so I'm working with this guy, and I'm kind of giving him the lead on this. He's a master's degree in counseling and psychology and all that stuff. He's working with all these other people. So I'm just part of the team. This is adjunct therapy, not alternative. It's as well as, not instead of. So yeah, I want to be a part of the team. So we're working. And after some months, I'm starting to think doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And it really started affecting my confidence, my self-confidence in this. I'm like, I keep seeing this guy almost every week, and nothing seems to be getting better. He's dealing with some comprehensive post-traumatic stress disorder. It just wasn't one event; it was many events over the course of decades as a child growing up. And he's doing talk therapy, he's doing all this stuff, and after about 8 months of working with him, I finally had to have a conversation with him, because I felt codependent, and my self-confidence was going down the drain because I'm like, I don't feel like I'm helping this guy. And so we're having this conversation, kind of a private conversation, not a session. I just called him out and said, we need to talk about this and where we're going. And eventually, as we're talking about, he says, I know this healing work is going to take years, if not decades, to heal. And I thought, oh, there we go. That's the problem. I think this is going to take weeks, maybe months. He thinks it's going to take decades to heal all his comprehensive post-traumatic stress disorder, let alone the physical stuff. And I thought, there's the disconnect, because we have two different viewpoints of how healing happens. And so in his world, his training and getting his master's degree, and what people told him was like, yes, it takes, if we got this all taken care of in 12 years, he'd be thrilled because we were ahead of schedule. And to me, we're 8 months in. I'm like, God, I feel like I'm not helping him, and I should bow out because I don't feel like I'm helping him at all. And this is a waste of our time. And so we had two different thoughts of how healing happens. And another great aspect of, I can't control people. I can't make them do because if he thinks it's going to take years, if not decades, I can't make him heal in 2 weeks. And not that it may take 2 weeks, but it's just like, I can't just make him heal. It's like, no. It's not going to take 12 years. Oh, yes, it is. I learned that in school. Okay, well, I can't change his mind about that. I could probably show him, over the course of time, show him research studies and things like that. But his viewpoint is that it's going to take years. And so guess what? It's going to take years. If your viewpoint is it happens safely, gently, and easily, and can happen quickly, then why wouldn't it happen? A lot of this work is just the placebo effect. And we've all known about the placebo effect, the mind healing under extraordinary circumstances, even though there should be no reason for it to heal. You're taking a sugar pill. They've tricked, that's probably the wrong word to use, but they've used placebo to help Parkinson's patients. And I guess maybe the right word is trick. They tricked the brain into creating dopamine. Even though that's the big problem with Parkinson's, the brain doesn't create dopamine. It's extraordinary what the brain can do. You think you're taking a healing medication, even though it's just a sugar pill, and you'll heal. What's doing that? The mind's doing. It's through thought alone. Oh, this pill will heal me, even though it won't. The pill will heal me. Therefore, the body heals itself. And that's what hypnotherapy does. It taps into your power to do that. And I know we could go on and on and on, but you have extraordinary power to heal, and that's hypnotherapy helps you tap into that.
Mm-hmm. Someone else I spoke to recently said that healing begins inside of our body, really begins in our mind.
Yeah. They've done research. They've done biofeedback on people where, they hook them up to all the, blood pressure and all the heart monitors or whatever, brain stuff. And found that people start healing when they make an appointment to go to the doctor. And they start to get better. And they start healing on the drive to the doctor's appointment. Because the body and mind think, oh, we're getting healed. There's a extraordinary, you can watch, there's a BBC documentary about this. There's a arthroscopic surgeon in Texas who does knee surgeries. He was the knee guy. And he wanted to see if there was like a scraping method and a kind of flushing out method or something. And he wanted to see which one was better for the patient, which one caused less pain, which one healed faster, all that kind of stuff. And he wanted to publish it. That's good for his career. But to publish research like that, you need a control group. And so he had 3 groups. One group got the flushing technique, one group got the scraping technique, and one group got fake knee surgery. And they actually, what they did is wheeled the patient in. They didn't tell anybody who was getting what type of surgery. Wheeled the people in, actually did an incision on the knee, had somebody else, and since it's, done with cameras, those little tiny cameras and stuff, they had somebody else's knee surgery on the video monitors. And they made all the noises and stuff and were there for like 40 minutes and then, bandaged up the little cut on his knee. Never did anything other than cut the knee. Just pretended and faked the rest of it. Those people got as well as the people who actually got actual knee surgery. And the guy had a real coming to Jesus mode. He's like, I don't even know if what I do matters, because he faked a surgery, and these people were using walkers and canes, and now they're playing basketball with their grandchildren. And 2 years later, they were still like running around and things because they thought they had knee surgery. They healed themselves. And there's that's probably on YouTube. You find the BBC documentary about it. And so it's extraordinary what the mind can do, like you just said. And if you can tap into that power, and one of the great modalities to do that is hypnotherapy. And I'll stand by it.
Yeah. So tell me some examples of where people have come to you for hypnotherapy. Some things that people can say, "Oh, I didn't know hypnotherapy would be good for this," and some of the things that you do for people. Let me rephrase that. Not some of the things you do for people, but some of the reasons why people come to you.
A lot of people come because of the anxiety, the anger, the maybe if they're struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what I see a lot of people for. There's also things like, I see recently, like last year for some reason, I saw a lot of teenagers for sports stuff, like whether it's baseball or cheerleading or dance or something, like they're great and then something happened to mess with their confidence. And then they're in a slump. And so I would see people to deal with confidence or something like that, where they're a teenager, test anxiety. And that goes along with, doing a job interview or public speaking, fear of public speaking and getting more confidence for public speaking, just wanting more joy and happiness in life. But, it was a great example is I was doing, in 2020 and 2021, I was doing classes for the cancer support community of Arizona. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. Name of my business is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. But I do most of since the COVID era, like so many like talk therapists and doctors' appointments and things, it's all mostly over Zoom now. And I do most of my sessions over Zoom, which works really well. Incredibly, the research shows that Zoom sessions, whether again it's a talk therapy or hypnotherapy or doctor's appointment or something, those sessions work as well as in person. And some of the sociological research that's been done on this shows that Zoom sessions may work better than in person because people feel relaxed and comfortable in their homes. They feel safe in their homes. And then they don't have to drive across town in rush hour traffic on a Friday afternoon to try to get their appointment. But anyway, I'm doing these classes for the cancer support community of Arizona. And they're classes like once a week on pain control and healing acceleration and immune system boosting, things like that. And in one series of these classes, there's an older woman in the class. I'm guessing she's about 70 years old. And she had been to two of the classes, Zoom classes, group classes, on this general topic of pain control or healing acceleration, whatever the class was about. And on the third class, I was early to the Zoom class because I'm setting up the class and getting the Zoom thing together. And she's early to the class. And so we're just chit-chatting. And she asked me if hypnotherapy will work with procrastination. And it will, because that's a mindset issue. The thing with fear and anxiety, you don't want to end fear and anxiety. That warns you around danger. That keeps you from walking down the dark alley at midnight, even though it's a shortcut home. No, keep to the lighted streets. That fear, like, I'll take to the lighted streets and the crowds, and it'll take me 15 minutes longer, but I'll be safe. Here in the down in the desert in the Phoenix area, Tucson, you're out walking in nature. There's a rattlesnake in the trail. Keep away from the rattlesnake. That anxiety and that fear is going to keep you safe. When it becomes unresourceful, now you're moving away from getting that report done on time for school or for work or whatever. And you're procrastinating because even though it will be beneficial to you, there's some fear around that. So yeah, hypnotherapy can help with that. So we actually set up a private appointment, one-on-one appointment for the very next day because I had an afternoon appointment open. And what's fascinating about this work is when the mind realizes it's going to do some healing work, the gears start turning. And you can go like, well, I can work on a problem, but why not just work on the problem? And so when she got to the appointment just 24 hours later, she says, I told you I wanted to work on procrastination, but what I really want to work on is why I don't matter in life. This is a 70-year-old woman who thinks she doesn't matter, who feels worthless in life. And so, okay, let's work on that. And so, again, there's a feeling state to that. We talked about that a little bit ago. there's a feeling state to anger and anxiety, but there's also a feeling state to not feeling worthy or feeling worthless or not mattering in life. That's caused by changing the brain chemistry. You only change your brain chemistry in that way through a thought or memory, even if it's unconscious. So you know what the problem is. You know where that feeling state's coming from. And so part of the work we were doing around this issue is let's regress back to the first time you felt that way. Let's do that in a safe way, but let's go back and heal what needs and resolve what needs to be resolved. And so I do the countdown, 10 down to 1, and on 1 you'll be at that very first time you felt that the origin of that feeling of not feeling worthy, of not mattering in life. 10 down to 1, and on 1 I say, and where are you? And the 70-year-old woman says, I'm standing up in my crib and my father's screaming at me because I won't stop crying. Now, that, standing up your crib, I don't know what that is, but that's like 12 months old, 14 months old, something like that. And, if she's 70 years old, that's maybe the early 1960s or so, maybe late 1950s. And maybe back then men weren't trained so well on how to nurture children. And maybe mom's out of the house. And maybe dad's having a bad day, a bad week, a bad life. Maybe he's just not the greatest father in the world. And the baby's crying. He doesn't know what to do about it. And he just wants some quiet in the house. He had a bad day. He's having just all of it. And he just wants some peace and quiet. And the only thing he knows how to do is just to scream louder than the baby and tell the baby to shut up. And in that instant, that child needing to justify why this is happening, this person is supposed to love her and protect her and nurture her, why this person's screaming at her, that the fear around that she needs to justify this. And the child comes out, well, the only reason this is happening, I guess I just don't matter. I guess I'm worthless. Now, is that true or not true? It doesn't matter. That's the instructions that were installed in that terror, in that trauma. And she held on to those instructions for some 70 years until one day she decided it was time to change them. She didn't want to feel like that anymore. And so we changed them. She resolved the issue. She healed what needed to be healed with the child. And I never saw her again. That was it. And I'd check in with her. We'd do emails back and forth over the course of about a year, every few months or so, just checking, how are you doing? She's doing great. She's doing fantastic. She did like 2-3 group sessions focusing on like pain control and healing acceleration and 1 solo session. And she didn't even know what the problem was. And that was it. That's how powerful this is. That's how powerful you are. And
there's no age limit to this.
And there's no age. No, God, no. I mean, works great. And maybe, and some of the research even shows it works better with little kids. Obviously, with the example I just showed, adults can do it, but it works great with kids because kids are great with imagination. And kids are great at playing pretend. And that's what a lot of this work is, just playing pretend. Whether you're a little kid, in elementary school or younger, I guess, all the way to being a teenager, to being in your 20s, all the way to being, in your 70s and 80s, however.
So I do breath work, and I have, it is. I've learned a lot this year about it. I've benefited a lot personally from doing breath work myself, and now being a facilitator for others. And I do both in person and virtually. And you're right, you can have just as powerful of an effect virtually as you can in person. Now, in person, I pick up the energy of the people. So for me, I've got to certainly watch that, but I can tell when people have really taken it deeper, because it's harder to come back out of it, one. And two, they're so surprised by some of their own emotions and reactions that have come up. But it really is about calming the nervous system and going into that state. And it is one toolbox. It is one tool in that toolbox to use when you notice you are anxious, or you're triggered, or you've been in a trauma experience and you don't know how to get out of it. So, I mean, I can certainly relate to what you're saying, and I think once people recognize that trigger and those things, then they can say, okay, how am I going to get out of this, and what's going to work best for me at this time.
Yeah. Breath work is extraordinary, and breath in and of itself is a great way to reset the nervous system. Those deep belly breaths, clearing out the system. Our brain takes 20% of the oxygen we breathe in. So if you're stress breathing just into your upper chest, you're not getting a whole lot of oxygen. You need to get it into the bottom of your lungs, let alone the actual techniques, the healing techniques of breath work, which is an actual healing modality. Breath work is extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah, it really has been, and it's been very fulfilling and moving to see people notice a change even with one session. But I wanted to kind of bring this full circle, and what a fascinating conversation, and to listen to, how this works and why it works, and how people can benefit from knowing more about it, and also participating in it. And so I'd like to ask you, as I ask all my guests, what's your SOS? What are those simple steps that people can take besides reaching out to talk to you more about what you do and how you can help them, that can help move the needle forward? If, say, someone has anxiety or test anxiety, or any number of examples you've shared.
Well, the biggest tip I can give people is what is strongest in your mind is what you do over and over again. What you practice, you get better at. And we know this from learning how to play the piano or the guitar, or if we learn dance or martial arts, or just learning to walk or ride a bicycle or drive a car, tying your shoes. What you practice, you get better at. But what if you're practicing anxiety? What if you're practicing fear? Are you literally not going to wire that into your system by practicing over and over again? So there's kind of two steps in the work I do with people. There's kind of two steps. There's the healing work to resolve the issues that may have happened in the past, if they're traumatic or depending on what we're working on. But there's also the practice of what do you want instead. And just because you get rid of the anxiety and the anger and the hate and the fear doesn't mean all of a sudden there's a rose garden and you're filled with joy and happiness and rainbows and unicorns. There's practice to that as well. Look at any master of anything, and they practice every day. Look at the Dalai Lama. I'm sure a lot of listeners know who he is, head of the Tibetan Buddhist spiritual community. And the man's 89 years old, and he still practices loving kindness and compassion meditation every day. And read his books. He talks about the anger and the despair and the sorrow of what's, not only going on in Tibet, but, the rest of the world. But, in Tibet, the Chinese government is still bulldozing out his monasteries to build roads and buildings, and primarily to give him the middle finger, and arresting his monks and torturing his monks. Of course, that's going to cause him to feel anger and despair and sorrow. It'd be strange if he didn't feel that. And he's been exiled out of Tibet since something like 1957, something like that. And so there's sorrow, there's despair, there's sadness around, there's anger around that. But he doesn't want that to be who he is. Certainly he's going to feel that because he's a human being. But he doesn't want that to be who he is. So every day he practices loving kindness and compassion meditation. And if anybody was to have it down by now, you think it'd be that guy. This guy's not married. He doesn't have any kids. He has a staff of people to meet his every need and want. And granted, he has great responsibility, but he doesn't have a lot of the life issues and challenges that the regular people, quote unquote, regular people, have to deal with. And yet he's still practicing. He's still doing the work. Look at any master musician. Yo-Yo Ma, considered one of the greatest cello players ever, if not, just alive today. Again, if anybody was to kick back and phone it in around the age of 40, it'd be that guy. But he's 67 and he's still maybe 68 at this point, and he's still practicing every day, 3, 4, 5 hours every day, because he wants to master this instrument, master this music. Martial arts, dance, whatever. Any black belt in judo or taekwondo, that 10th degree black belt in taekwondo, you can't get any higher than that. And yet they're still practicing. Bruce Lee practiced every day. And so if you want joy and happiness and love and confidence and everything, you can have it. But there's a certain relentlessness to this work. Just like working your body. if you want to maintain or get to and then maintain a certain health, losing weight and then building up muscle or whatever it is, you just don't get to go to a personal trainer once and then go to the gym once. No, it's every day, and not just for 6 weeks. It's for the rest of your life. You may, I don't know, may or may not. I'm sure some of your listeners may remember Jack LaLanne back in the 60s or 70s. He was, for those of you who don't know him, he was Richard Simmons before Richard Simmons, without all the fabulousness maybe. But he was the health guru guy who was on Mike Douglas and Merv Griffin and Johnny Carson and do feats of strength and talk about health. He was a vegetarian in the 1970s, a vegetarian and a juicer, and he had his own line of blenders and he had his own line of gyms. You go to the Jack LaLanne gym and he had his own health show on whatever PBS or wherever. He and his feat of strength on his birthday is he would swim a lake pulling rowboats filled with people. He was doing that into his 80s. Well, he was working out the day before he died at the age of 96. And so there's a relentlessness to this work. We know this with physical health, and whether you're doing a spin class or dance class or going to the gym or walking with your friends in the park or around town or whatever you're doing, you have to do something every day to maintain your physical health. Well, what about your mental health and your emotional health? Those you can't let those slide. And there's something you need to do, and whatever that is for you. So the Dalai Lama does meditation work. His meditation work, loving kindness and compassion. Other people do something creative. Yo-Yo Ma practices the cello. Whatever it is for you, whether it's meditation or prayer or some sort of guided visualization work or recordings or whatever it is, you need to find something to strengthen, empower, and at the very least maintain that joy, that happiness. And so it's there. Yes, you're going to experience sadness and grief at times when there's loss, but that you don't have to maintain that sadness and the depression. That's just a human response to an extraordinary situation. But to strengthen and empower that happiness and that joy and that lightness, whatever, that confidence, requires work, just like working out your body. And so there's a relentlessness to this. And even if you just have 5 minutes, and whether that's just maybe doing some quick yoga just to move your body around, or stand up and do the power poses. Remember that Stanford or Harvard study, maybe it was Harvard, just standing, in a power pose, a Wonder Woman pose or the Superman pose, changes the body.
There's a TED Talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there, I would say, my one SOS tip, if I only get one, it'd be just, what is it that you need to do every day? Even if you just have 5 minutes, what can you do to strengthen and maintain? Even if you have to pretend that you're happy, just mentally rehearse it. Just like an Olympic athlete is going to mentally rehearse their event, not only practice, being on the mat if you're doing gymnastics or the starting line or whatever. Not only are you going to practice running or swimming or gymnastics, but you're going to sit on a couch or a recliner and mentally rehearse it as well, because it will literally wire that into the brain. So what are you going to do? Practice being happy. I mean, it sounds maybe a little silly, but practice being happy. And if you're not happy, pretend you're happy. Just pretend. And the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So.
Well, and I definitely believe that, our health is more than diet and exercise. And this conversation is proof positive about that. And so I'm going to ask you, is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we wrap up that we didn't cover?
I would take another 2 hours of your time, but I think just if to wrap it up, I think I touched on it a little bit just a minute ago. Even if you don't feel happy, you don't feel joyful, you can pretend. The mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. That's why a nightmare feels so scary. Whether it's something super duper realistic, like a war veteran having a PTSD dream about the war, even though it was 30 years ago, or something super ridiculous, like a cheeseburger's chasing down the street with his 2 hot dog friends throwing coconuts at you. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. But in both scenarios, they're both cozy and comfortable in bed, and yet your mind thinks it's really happening, and it will change your physiology to turn on the stress response. 300% more blood now moving to the big muscle of your arms to fight. 300% more blood moving to the big muscle of your legs to escape. Your brain's creating adrenaline and cortisol. all because, and it's got to come from somewhere. So it's turning down the power in your immune system, your digestive system, all because of cheeseburgers chasing on the street. Your mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. That's happening while you're in deep sleep. Imagine what you can do in your waking world. And so what if you just took 5 minutes to pretend you were happy and pretended you had the confidence? And instead of, let's say somebody's giving a speech in a couple months at the big conference, and they're like, especially as they're falling asleep, oh my God, I'm going to stumble over my words. I'm going to forget what I'm going to say. My PowerPoint's going to be upside down. People are going to laugh at me and chuckle and roll their eyes and throw rotten tomatoes at me and chase me off the stage with pitchforks and fire. You're practicing failure. So what is not unlike a gymnast who's visualizing, oh, I'm going to stumble and trip and roll off the mats and the bar's going to break and I'm going to fall. They're practicing failure. You have to practice success. And that will literally wire that into your brain. So practice happiness, practice joy, even if you have to fake it till you make it. That's a real thing. And even if you just have to just pretend you're happy, and it'll come.
Yes, it will come. I have practiced that. I've practiced that in the past in careers and in situations that I wasn't terribly comfortable in. And I just kept visualizing it. I visualized being successful in it. But anyway, I'd like to ask you where listeners can find you, listeners and viewers, I should say. Yeah.
Sure. The best two ways to find me are at my website's Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. And like I was joking before we hit the record button, as I like to pick names that are difficult to remember and difficult to spell. But if I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, so even if you just Googled Flagstaff Hypnosis or Flagstaff AZ Hypnosis, you'll find me. Arizona Integrated Hypnotherapy, Craig Meriweather. You'll also find me at ACE Any Test. That's a little easier to remember. ACE Any Test, which is a course I develop about test anxiety and building confidence around tests or auditions or job interviews. And either way, you can find my email through there.
Great. Well, Craig, thank you so much for your time today. It's been fascinating learning about hypnotherapy, and I can tell you're passionate about what you do, and I hope people will be open and receptive to exploring this type of experience, this tool in the toolbox. And I certainly hope our paths cross again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And Susie, I appreciate the invitation to be on your show. I know it's a lot of work to get a podcast going and maintain it week after week. So I appreciate your invitation and your trust to be on the show. We didn't know where the conversation was going, but it was really fun. And thank you for having me on.
You're most welcome. Well, friends, sadly, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for listening and watching SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. Today's episode was a summary of the myths around hypnotherapy. I hope you'll come back and visit. And quick reminder on how you can support this podcast: like, share, and subscribe. Send me a review and any questions you might have, and that question may be answered in a future episode. Follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And if you'd like to be added to my weekly email newsletter, send me your email address. I'm happy to add you. Thanks for reaching out. And if you're interested in finding out more about coaching or breath work, I'd be happy to have a chat with you. Until next time, take care and see you soon.